we're going to talk about when you have a tab that's open and running. We're not going to talk about cash tabs. Basically, anytime somebody just pays cash for something, they order 2 beers and you tell them 10 bucks, they give you $10 cash, you ring it in, give them change if they need to. Right? So that's basically that. What I'm going to talk about is how to start a tab that stays open. So if they order some drinks and they want to order some food, or they want to sit there for a while and they don't want to close out after every drink they get, they want to keep a tab running, that's what we're talking about. Starting tabs, you basically have 2 ways to do this. You can either do it with a credit card or without a credit card. And depending on where you work, they might have standard procedures and how you do this. Like they're almost always going to want you to get a credit card every time if you can. And it might be that that's the policy no matter what. Like you can never start a tab without a credit card, or sometimes they'll take an ID. But sometimes you can work at places where they're a little more lax, like you might know your locals and you can just keep a tab running for them without needing to take a credit card from them. So basically when you start a tab, you can do it with or without a card. Now when you do it with a card, you take the card, sometimes the computer system, depending on what you're using, you can like swipe it and it'll open and pre-verify the card, and you can actually give the card back to them, and there's a verification that's held in the computer. Then other times you'll actually physically hold the card behind the bar. You might put it in a cup or a box or who knows what, on a little clipboard with their tab or something printed out. So this is all very dependent upon where you work. When you start working at your specific establishment, they'll train you on how to do this. Even if you've been a bartender for like 800 years, you have to get trained for a few days to go over certain procedures. One of them being starting tabs, closing tabs, and on and on. So if you're gonna start a tab, you can maybe take a card, you hold it, whatever. Or sometimes you can just take driver's license, hold an ID or a passport or something. Or if you have a credit card, then you can charge them and they don't have an option. When you start a tab with a card, you can start it under their name, is usually the best way, under their last name. I usually don't start tabs under their first name because, there's a lot of common similar first names. When you start it under the last name, then it's a little more unique. What I usually do is, because we have a system where we type in the name when you start a tab, and I'll type in the last name, comma, first letter of the first name, right? Just so it's easy, because if you have like 5 Johnsons, you want Rick Johnson's tab separate from John Johnson, right? So you don't want to mix those up. So just as a habit, that's kind of my technique. Or you can just do last name. Most of the bartenders that I work with, they just type in the last name. Sometimes the computer system will pre-populate the name for you when you swipe it. Maybe you hold the card, whatever. And then sometimes you can just grab their card and hold it, and you can type it under their name. Like if you know them, you know which tab is theirs. You don't have to put it under their last name, if you don't want to. And again, this just comes down to different procedures that are at different bars. And that's pretty much the basics of starting a tab. And then you hold that during the whole time while they're drinking, while they're eating. And then when they want to close out, then you take the card. You generally ask them like, hey, you want me to put the tab on the card that I have? They'll either say yes most of the time, and then you run the card, and then you give it back to them. And they cash out just like normal. And that's pretty much it when you have a card. So not a whole lot to it. The other way you can start tabs is if you don't take cash and you don't take a card, but sometimes it's a little bit slower, and you can start a tab under the person's name just because you know them. You can just type it in. Or sometimes the seats at your bar will be numbered or lettered. Like we name ours kind of because our bar is like huge and it sort of snakes around. So the chairs move, they don't always stay in one place. So we have certain areas of the bar. There's a right TV, there's the right taps, there's a right well, there's a right corner, there's a right end, an end, a left corner, left side, left pole, left TV. So you might have different ways that you name those tabs. And so it would be like right TV couple, or left corner guys, or something like that. And this is one of those areas where you'll have specific norms within the bar that you work at, and these are things that you can't know until you get there. Again, this is all stuff that they'll teach you and train you on. So maybe you start them under the name of the chair, like seat number 4 or E or whatever, however they're named, and you can type them in under there. And then you just keep a tab running. Generally, this just happens when it's slower. Like if you're working a slower day shift and there's not a lot of people. Most of the time when you have to take cards is when it's just super busy, right? Because if it's busy, somebody comes up to the bar like, yeah, start me a tab. If you don't take any money or you don't take a card, then they just walk off and you're never gonna see them again. When it's slower and they're just sitting there and they're right in front of you the whole time, then it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, ask your boss, your coworkers, what the standard procedures are gonna be. And that's basically it. You basically just take a card or an ID or a phone or something that's gonna incentivize them to come back and wanna pay their damn tab. Hold it. Usually you hold a credit card under their last name / first letter of the first name, and there you go. And then you ring up the tab, and when they're ready to go, close it out, sayonara, and there it is. I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, make sure you leave them below in the comments, and I'll make sure that I clarify anything that doesn't make any sense, or if I kind of just skipped over something that you might have had a question about, let me know and I'll make sure I'll get it answered for you. All right, cool. That's it on this episode. Make sure to share this if you thought this video was awesome. Make sure you subscribe. Got new stuff coming out all the time. And I will see you next time right here on Bartending Pro. Peace.